people are aware of the growing threat of cyber attacks. When you have Fed Chairman Powell come online and say that's the biggest threat to our system, when you have the elite run simulations, does that mean that's something we have to deal with? And if it does happen, let's say Bank of America gets hacked, what does that do to the confidence of the system? That's the awakening moment where people say, I need to get some real money in my hands. That to me is the biggest concern into 2022. What happens if there is a cyber attack? What does that do to the whole system?
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. He joins us for this last weekly market update of 2021. Andy, thanks for joining us again.
It's great to be here. I can't believe the year is over. Just like a blur.
It is. I mean, I think that something like you said about 6 months ago, we were talking about price action and about how we were seeing like the lowest premiums and you said, in a year, and then you said, wait a minute, I guess it's been 2 years. It all just feels like 1 year. This whole nightmare that we've all been through, we've all been wanting to wake up some morning and realize, that was just a bad dream. Now this is the way life was supposed to be, where we can actually travel, see loved ones, go where we want to go, do what we want to do, and we don't know how long it's going to be till we get that, but a lot of people around the world are standing up for liberty in many different countries and speaking out, even though it's becoming increasingly difficult to do so. So it seems that our channel name of Liberty and Finance is right on over the target, as Gregor Mannarino likes to say.
Yeah, I don't. It's a very strange place we find ourselves in. Hopeful for a return to normal. Concerned that maybe there is no return to normal, that this is a new normal. It's a very strange place that we find ourselves in, but it certainly has been a whirlwind. That's for sure. The last 2 years have gone by in literally in a blur, and it's certainly been great doing this with you alongside me, and it's made it a lot more comforting and a lot easier to navigate with someone like yourself alongside, and I'm eager to see what 2022 brings. I think it's going to be, if nothing else, the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. These aren't anything but dull and complacent, that's for sure. So here's to 2022. Let's hope it's a good one.
Yeah, I wanted to take the chance that this last weekly market update of 2021 to look back at what did we learn in 2021 and what do we anticipate coming down the tracks towards us in 2022, so that we can prepare for that in the spirit of the roots of our channel about awareness and preparedness. And we had a opportunity earlier this week to do a live call-in show, a live stream, Ask the Brokers, and we had a flood of questions coming in, and we weren't able to keep up with them during the brief time that we had. A lot of them came from people who were rather new at collecting metals, or even the reawakening to the concept of sound money and real things in general. One of the questions that was pervasive, that kept being asked in different ways, was how much is enough? And we talked about Bill Holter's quote saying, well, how much do you not want to lose, out of your portfolio? We talked about your reminder to people about the utility of junk silver, that sort of thing. So if you want to give us your take on that question, when people are just either getting started for the very first time, or if they've already been accumulating precious metals for some time and they're asking, heading into these, as we've talked about, unprecedented times, how much precious metals is enough for an ordinary person, ordinary family? What thought processes should they maybe think of in that regards?
Our business was founded on Swiss investments in the early 90s, and in the early 90s, let's call it, far more normal than we find ourselves in now in many respects. Back then, I learned from Swiss bankers. I spent 3 summers in Zurich, right out of 19, 20, and 21 years old. I spent time learning from Swiss bankers and learning the Swiss insurance industry and things that were applicable to our business. And one thing that I learned from just about everyone I talked to in Switzerland was that even in the very best of times, one should have 10% of their assets in precious metals. And the question that I would pose to people is, where are we? I mean, are these the very best of times, or are these not the very best of times? I think that one thing that we've learned in 2021 was that the central bank can do anything or everything, just as long as we continue to believe that money is real. Which, of course, when we talk about the US dollar, it's not. And inflation is the one thing that can pierce that illusion. And I think that's what we are beginning to see, the erosion of purchasing power, the piercing of the illusion that the dollar is money when it really isn't. It used to be, in the picture behind you and the pictures behind me, when gold and silver represented our currency. No longer is that the case. And I think the question becomes, when asked, when is enough? Look, we have overvaluation in every single asset class and a dollar that is rapidly losing value. So it's a personal decision. For me, if I were to tell you what I really believed, or tell people out there what I really believed, I'd probably shoot myself in the foot and lose all credibility. But I will tell you that it's a whole lot more than traditional advisors would recommend. I think we were at a period of time where the real question is, what exposure do you want to a currency that's $140 trillion in debt and at the lowest interest rates in human history, and is continuing to choose inflation over austerity, and work backwards from there? Not how much gold and silver should you own, but what exposure do you want to this system that's at the late stages of this Keynesian-based experiment, and the late stages of an environment where the government really has no choice, in my opinion, but to inflate or default. And so I would work backwards from there and say it's a whole lot more than would traditionally be considered normal. And these ain't the best of times. So 25, 50, 75%, I don't know. What is too much? What isn't enough remains to be seen. But in these times of craziness, I fall back on 5,000 years worth of history and take great comfort in a large portion of my assets in precious metals, and I've never lost a minute of sleep as a result of it.
Another reference point that occurs to me is for people who have lived through and had the actual experience in their families for generations of needing precious metals as a life preserver or as a ark to carry them through rough times. I had a very close acquaintance over a period of a decade. We still touch base frequently at my previous work where I was a professional engineer. And he told me stories of his family in India where it's very normal. It's very culturally normal for families to accumulate gold all the time in that culture. But he said his grandfather died and his grandmother became a widow and had to keep the family together over a period of an entire generation. And through that entire time, she was just completely occupied with trying to keep the household going, and they were able to get by as a family for an entire generation until the next young ones could grow up and enter the workforce and that sort of thing, by using the gold savings that the dad had in a home safe, very little bit at a time, but it was a life raft for that family. Now they've got, plentiful generations. They got business owners, doctors, etc., professionals in the family. But that family was at risk of extinction if they hadn't had that lifeline that the grandfather had provided to them.
Yeah, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. Done again throughout all of history. You see, it may not be an exact. What's the old saying? History doesn't always repeat, but it often rhymes. And I think that we're heading into that direction where, we have such difficulty in finding price discovery right now, where assets have gone crazy, where the top 1% of the country owns almost 35% of the entire U.S. net worth, where inflation doesn't bother the top 1%. In fact, they become wealthier beyond their wildest imagination. They don't care. They're the ones who are pulling the strings, where the rest of us face difficulty just putting food on the table, where 50% of the country owns just under 3% of the total net worth of this country. And it's becoming harder and harder and harder for working class families to get by. So I really do believe that people need to own gold and silver, period, and not as an investment, but as wealth. We are in a period of time where it is very obvious that the elite are going to choose inflation. They will not stop inflating. They will not taper. They may do some token. They may let it try to get up near 3% to save face. But then when everything starts to collapse, they'll go right back to what they were doing. They cannot stop what they're doing unless they want the whole thing to collapse. And maybe that's part of the plan. Maybe that is what they're trying to do. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that I do believe that if people don't own any precious metals right now, they're making what I believe a generational mistake. And, things go round and round and history repeats itself, and may not be the exact same circumstance, but for 5,000 years, gold and silver have proven to be wealth, proven to be money when everything else is just credit. And I think that this is a valuable lesson to learn, and one that people will learn the hard way if they don't have at least a limited exposure to some silver and some gold.
If we could zoom in now to your area of particular expertise, and that's as an insider in the retail precious metals space, we have often questions that are submitted by viewers in that regards for you. That's one of the things I want to focus about in what did we learn from 2021 and what do we look forward to in 2022. One of the things that I saw firsthand from at least my little vantage point there is how quickly and how easily we run out of, and other dealers can run out of product when there's even a smattering of increase in interest from the investing public. So, could you tell us maybe some specific examples, like in that regards, or other things that occur to you as lessons we learned in 2021?
Product, as I've said ad nauseum, like the little boy who cries wolf, the difficulty getting product in this industry, in my opinion, will define it in many ways. Where I'm not just saying that. It's become very difficult to get product. The premiums are rising again. The U.S. Mint Eagles have never come back down in 2 years. We're starting to see more difficulty in getting the Britannias, as an example, for the U.K. They ran out of blanks months ago. Still haven't seen any. Junk silver. No one sells us any. So premiums are no longer in the junk category. In fact, they're higher than just about everything that we sell except for U.S. Silver Eagles. And this is at a period of time where we've noted the expansion into the mainstream, but yet only a very small sliver of expansion into the mainstream. I do believe that there will become an awakening. At some point, something is going to trigger the mainstream into looking to where they can run to, and there are no places to run yet, with the exception, rather, of precious metals. So I think it will only get more and more and more difficult. It will shape this industry. When that seminal event happens, very quickly, people will realize exactly what I've been talking about, that, when I buy 50,000 ounces of silver as the special that we're going to offer here later today, I have 50,000 South African Krugerrands coming in that I bought 90 days ago. 2022 is paid for up front. Normally, it was a much easier endeavor to get silver than it is now, where you pay 3 months in advance, literally, hedge it, run the logistics on it. But 50,000 ounces of silver, which seems like a lot, and it is, can be gone in a day. You've seen it. And then when we're out, what do? Well, we're 2 weeks out. We're 3 weeks out. Well, we can try this. Well, the point of it is that we're talking to the pimple on the elephant. When the elephant walks into the room, very quickly, everything in this industry will disappear. And when it disappears, with a greater interest globally into it, getting resupplied, I think, will be very difficult. I've said it all year. I started saying it to you in 2020, and I will be right. At some point, the lack of supply, the inability to get any product is going to define this industry 100%. And that I'll stick by my guns. I've seen it nonstop. And if we didn't have the relationships that we've built over 30 years, we would not have the ability to offer what we've been doing now for the past 2 years. So to me, that is the biggest issue. The biggest is supply in an industry that is gaining attention by the mainstream, yet has only dipped its toe into the mainstream, which is a big expansion from what we're used to seeing previously. But I think there will come a time where the public, in mass, looks to a refuge, always too late, after the move has been established, after the insiders have already taken position in this industry. And there will be a frantic scurry to get whatever scraps are left. Dunnigan, I believe that in the bottom of my soul. I think that's what will happen.
Yeah, in fact, that happened to me a couple of times in the past week. I had clients calling up like the third day after we announced the last weekly market update special and saying, do you still have the, in that case, it was the 22 Philharmonics. And it's like, no, they were all sold out. And we usually had, most of our specials have lasted at least a week of the availability. This one we had more than we usually get, and yet they were sold out within 2 days. So it's the rapid change. And the funny thing is, because I wanted to talk with you about this season that we're in, this end of the year. Last year was very quiet in November and December. This year, not so much, not as quiet. In November particularly, there was pretty high retail activity. And people, I mentioned on the channel here, people were making their move. They're getting their 401ks moved over into a precious metals IRA, or they're liquidating certain assets, and they're getting themselves positioned either right before or right after the New Year's here, because we've had multiple experts on our show, Michael Pinto, among others, Alistair McLeod, others, talking about the potential for a major market volatility coming up in the first and second quarter of the year. And when people see the stock markets, for example, plunge like 2-3 days in a row, and they don't see a immediate rebound, then they go running for, well, where can I find safety? And they are looking to metals. But the thing that happens, if people are looking for this super low drop down in metals prices, what we found from last year was when that happens, good luck finding anything. So,
yeah. And how about the fact that, in 2019, there was the group, the World Bank and the World Monetary Organization that ran a simulation on pandemics. And ironically enough, a few months later, we had one. This year, there was a simulation run on a global cyber attack. The World Bank, the IMF, the BIS, 11 countries simulating what would happen in a global cyber attack. Schwab was there. Does that mean that that's foreshadowing of what's to come? And if that ever did happen, we see the proliferation of cyber attacks all throughout 2021, the pipeline, the beef industry, grocery stores. We're seeing it everywhere where, people are certainly aware of the growing threat of cyber attacks. But when you have Fed Chairman Powell come online and say that's the biggest threat to our system, when you have the elite run simulations, does that mean that's something we have to deal with? And if it does happen, let's say Bank of America gets hacked, what does that do to the confidence of the system? What if Coinbase gets hacked? What does that do for the confidence of everyone who has assets digitally held, like we all do? In cryptocurrency, in banking, in brokerages, in everything. That's the awakening moment where people say, I need to get some real money in my hands. And that's when it's almost impossible to, I think, in my mind's eye anyway, to come across it, because the amount of money that's been created over the past few years, courtesy of the Fed, it would take a drop in the bucket for a couple of these very, very, very wealthy institutions or people to literally dry up the entire system in our industry. So anyways, that to me is the biggest concern into 2022 is what happens if there is a cyber attack? What does that do to the whole system? What does that do to confidence in the whole system? And that's something that I'm looking as very interesting, that they just happened to run a simulation just like they did in 2019.
Also cautionary from a general preparedness standpoint in that regards, people have pointed out that our electric grid and other aspects of our critical infrastructure are dependent upon proper functioning of our cyber resources. So if there were a cyber attack from any source that were able to penetrate major command centers, that kind of thing, it could affect not only our financial lives, but also make for a very cold winter, et cetera. So people, make sure that you're considering all aspects of preparation, including not the least food, shelter, warmth, etc., water. Andy, in the face of all the potential disruptions that are coming in, the fact that people who are listening to this podcast are definitely in the 0.5% that are more aware than most. What can we provide them for an option? You mentioned earlier about the Krugerrands. What have we got coming? How many? How and what price?
50,000 of them at $4.09 over the price of silver. Premiums are rising again, and I expect this to be a trend into 2022. Rising premiums. More people interested in precious metals. $4.09 over the price of silver for 2022 Krugerrands. They will be in stock late this week or early next week. They've already been shipped. I think that they are as good of a choice as anything that you could ever buy. We still have an awful lot of Silver Eagles in stock, but as you know, I paid so much money for them over the price of silver that even if I sell them at $9 over the price of silver, which still probably makes us the least in the country, it's just not, to me, not worthy of dipping your toe into that pool yet. So when we look at choices, I think the Krugerrand is as good as any. Remember, there are 6 major mints in the world: U.S., Canada, Austria, Australia, South Africa, the United Kingdom. Anything you buy from those 6 mints is synonymous with integrity, quality, liquidity, demand. Krugerrand is as good as it gets done again. So, I wish I had more stuff to offer here as a year-end special, but we've blown through so much stuff here towards the end of the year that and most of our allocations for 2022 won't be in until the first or second week in January. Not only is this a good choice at a good price, but they'll be in stock and ready to ship when our shipping department opens up right after the new year.
Well, Andy, we always appreciate you keeping us appraised of what's going on the inside of the retail supply chain and helping people to be aware of why they need to be not only waking up themselves, but waking their friends, family, and neighbors up to the extent that we can to be aware and prepared. Folks, do make other preparedness measures as well. Make sure your family is set for the things that you need most. Keep the loved ones you have a plan, have a communication method plan, and a backup plan. And we'll stay in touch as best we can here on libertyandfinance.com, youtube.com/libertyandfinance. You'll find us on Brighteon and on Rumble and on SoundCloud. We're trying to spread out so you can find us in more places in case we get disrupted anywhere. Andy Schectman, CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, as always, thanks for being here every week with us here on Liberty and Finance. On behalf of our viewers, deeply appreciate what you're doing here. And people are grateful for you, and I am too. Thanks for being here on Liberty and Finance.
It's my deepest and most sincere honor. As I've said many times on this show, I am so deeply honored to work with you and your family. It is a pleasure. It is a joy, and we'll see this through together. So, wishing you, your family, and everyone out there a very happy, healthy, prosperous 2022, and we'll look forward to picking up where we left off right after the first of the year. But make it a good one, Dunnigan. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Andy. God bless you and your family, and bless every single one of you who are listening to this podcast. And take care. We'll be back with you next time. This is Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver broker for Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized private service from one of the oldest and best companies in the business. 31 years strong, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, 0 complaints, licensed and bonded. For physical delivery, vault storage, or precious metals IRAs, excellent prices, privacy, and confidentiality. Pay by check, money order, ACH, bank wire, or Bitcoin. Satisfaction guaranteed. For fastest service, just call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 888-81-LIBERTY. And either I or one of my sons and fellow brokers will call you back as soon as we can and understand your needs.